All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. That means a lot. I want to spend just a second thanking Alex and Andra for putting such an amazing show. I think they deserve another round of applause. They've done a wonderful job. So thank you for making that happen. So I want to talk about something that has been intriguing. It's been the talk of the times. We spend a lot of time talking about it. But here's one of the things that absolutely fascinates me, and that is we are extremely fortunate to work in a field where there is absolutely not a moment of boredom. We got things going on all the time. And somebody asked me, what is your profession? And I wanted to say, what does it feel like doing what I do? And I said, my job is being the kid in the candy store every single day. And that's what truly excites me for what we do. Because we tackle problems, we find solutions, we try to understand, we get confused all over again, and then we repeat it. I once posted on social media that to describe what my life is, I wake up in the morning thinking, I know everything I need to know. And I go to bed thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that is what fascinates me truly about the things we need to comprehend every single day. So I want to talk today about, I called it, it ain't what you think, with a little pun intended with the AI in it. So obviously I'm going to focus on AI today in terms of what it is and what it is not. And it's one of the things that we get into in our lives is you're probably going to find two kinds of people around you. The first kind are the ones that are absolutely infatuated. They have drunk the Kool-Aid and they cannot stop talking about this and whatever this is, right? It could be microservices. I'm so glad we have AI now because people are quiet about microservices for the first time, right? And whatever it is, they'll be continuously saying, that's the best thing in the world, you cannot live without it. The other extreme are the eternal pessimist. Oh, that's never going to work. And they will kind of bring you down and burn the house. And I think somewhere in the middle is where we really want to be. Because there are benefits to what we can use, but we don't want to drive off the cliff without thinking as well. And that's what I want to talk about, my own experience in terms of where I found this useful, where I find it a little troubling, but also where we probably will head as time goes on. So let's talk about that as we go along here. So with that said, let's talk about, let's see if this is going to work actually. So let's talk about the world of AI we live in. That doesn't want to move. Let's see why. That one is, oh, there we go. It's a little slow. Okay. So let's start with this question. Who here finds AI to be fascinating? Okay, but half the room got it. The next question is, who here finds AI to be very disturbing? About the same number of hands. Who here finds AI to be both fascinating and disturbing at the same time, right? And who here will not raise your hand no matter what I ask? Okay, all right. So essentially, in this case, we got about a mixture of this, right? And to me, that's one of the things that really excites me is this is at the very same time fascinating and frustrating and disturbing, all of that put together at the same time. But as it turns out, we keep thinking about these technologies and we talk about, oh my gosh, this is new stuff we are dealing with. But decades ago, Arthur Clarke wrote what is known as the Clarke's Law. And I fascinate about some of the things he observed decades ago. So the first Clarke's Law, he said, is when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. And so when they say, yeah, it can be done, believe it. It most likely can be done. But that's not the only thing he says in that. He goes on to say, but when he states that something is impossible, he's probably wrong. And that is actually even more important to keep in mind. Because as we get older, we become those resistors. We become those naysayers. I cannot tell you how many times a young developer comes to me and says, oh, we can do this. I'm like, no, kid, you can't do it. And then they kind of look at me, it's like, really? And I'll tell you, to my credit, I always have a little doubt in myself. So I tell them, why don't you prototype it? And they do. And they come back and say, dear old man, this works actually. I'm like, I'm so glad you tried. Because obviously it works, but I just was biased about it. And so I'm always a fan of this one statement, and that is, please do not confuse your inability with impossibility. Because impossibility is a very tall order. You're ruling out, don't even bother, this won't work. But my inability is very humbling for me to recognize. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't know how to do it. Maybe you don't know how to do it. But we sit down and talk to each other, and there's a little spark in our mind, and we say, whoa, what about this one? Can we try it? So don't confuse your inability with impossibility. I don't know is a very powerful statement, because that allows us to go explore solutions rather than saying, end of story, shut the door down, it's impossible. The second law that Clark talks about is, the only way of discovering the limits of possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. So if you feel like something is impossible, go try it. And what is the worst thing that can happen? You proved that it's impossible, at least for now, or at least you gave an opportunity to explore what's going on. But the third law is also very relevant to the times we live in. And he says, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. How many times have you said that as you're working with AI? You're like, how did that do that? That looks magical, we say that. Well, magical is a word we use when we couldn't comprehend that leap that we see in front of us. But he nailed it, and this is the magic we are living in the times right now. It feels magical to what is going on right now, and it's truly amazing to be able to wake up and try these things and be a little overwhelmed, a little humbled is a nice thing to have. Because while we are riding this journey, we are intrigued by the surroundings as well. I would rather live that life than a life of boredom. But I'm going to ask the question though, is AI revolutionary or is it evolutionary? Now, I've been programming for about close to 40 years now. I'm a pretty old guy, actually. But I would look at what has been done, and I realized one day that the young kids get excited about stuff, so do we the old people as well. But I realized in our field, we're not doing new things. We are doing the same old things, but we just give a new name for it and get really excited about it all over again. And this is absolutely fascinating. You just need to translate the new words to the old words, and you're like, oh, we used to call it that back in time. But in the case of AI, thankfully, we call it AI, and we're still calling it AI, but we're getting excited all over again. So in a way, if you think about it, it turns out the thing we are excited about has been talked about and worked on for decades, actually. Back in the 1950s, Alan Turing focused his efforts on really artificial intelligence. They didn't call it AI back then, but they wanted to talk about machines that can think. And they were interested in, what if machines can think? That was an intriguing question that Alan Turing had. In fact, we use this still today, and we're trying to prove or disprove. And this basically leads to what we call as the Turing test. So essentially, a Turing test is, it defines it as a computer could be said to think if the human interrogator could not tell it apart through conversation from a human being. Now I know there are some people you talk to, you doubt they are machines. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. This is the other way around, right? We are wondering if these machines are like human, and that's a more complicated problem we need to deal with. And so this is something, and AI models are getting closer and closer to this. We're not quite there yet, but it's getting closer to it. So maybe one day we can declare and say, oh my gosh, we have reached that point, and we have achieved that, if you will. But the term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 by John McCarthy. So this term actually came after Alan Turing was trying to decide on machines that could think, and AI, again, has been in the minds of people. And again, these are two pioneers in the field back in time, but literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people have worked on it, all the way up and including Geoffrey Hinton, who got the Nobel Prize last year in physics, but for his work related to artificial intelligence. So this has been in the evolution for a very long time. But we truly live in a time of glory, in my opinion, because rather than talking about it, we can touch it, we can feel it, we can experience it, and we can live it. And that is amazing, in my opinion, for the concepts that's been evolving for literally decades. But almost every revolution is an evolution for humans, because it takes decades, if not centuries sometimes, to gain traction. So talking about gaining traction, for example, as it turns out, we can learn from other parts of history quite a bit. So speaking of traction, it turns out that steam engines took centuries of evolution and perfection. And before they even figured out we could actually have a steam-powered engine. And that journey, again, took about 200 years to really perfect and get things working. So sometimes it takes decades, sometimes it takes centuries for us to be able to do things. And we are, again, looking at AI, but I'm saying, don't be in a rush. We are just starting still. We're not in the end of this by any stretch of imagination. We got to give it time to grow. Now, as it turns out, I'm sure there are people in this room with various experience and various age. Some of you are in your 20s, some of you in 30s, some of you are maybe in your 50s and maybe even 60s. And we are asking the question, what does this mean to me? And as it turns out, it means great to almost everybody, again, because we can learn from history. Back in time, about 150 years ago, it fascinates me because we kind of look around us and we feel like everything has been around forever, but not really. If you look up, when was bicycles invented? When did bicycles become so prominent? You would say, bicycle? That should have been 50,000 years, right? As it turns out, about 150 years. We didn't really have these things back in time. So back in time, about 150 years ago, people would ride in carriages. So if you want to go from one place to another, you would be in a horse-driven carriage. I've actually driven not only in a horse-driven carriage, I've driven in a bullock cart, where it's a bull that drives it as well, because places where I visited back in time when I was a child, there were no cars. So I have lived this life. It's not like, wow, I used to hear about it. It's just that fortunately, sometimes you are in that split of the history where you experience the old and the new at the same time. And so they used to ride these horses. But the problem is, if you go to the kids these days and say, you can drive these horse wagons, like, ooh, that's awesome. But you know what? If you own one of these, it's expensive because you got to feed the horses. And you got to clean up behind them. And they become diseased. You have to treat them. So at that time, if you had a horse carriage, you were spending $200 a year. Just think about what $200 was 150 years ago. That was a lot of money. So people were eager to get rid of horse carriages. They want to travel, but they don't want horses. They wanted faster horses. Well, then, of course, back in the early 1900s, They decided eventually that we could have better horsepower, and we had these automobiles. And you could just sit in them and you could drive them. Now, if I tell you cars are cheap, you're going to laugh at me. Cars were cheap compared to the horses. If I tell you cars are better for the environment, you will laugh at me. They were better than having to clean up behind the horses. They did not drop things on the road you had to clean, because those things not only smell, they would create disease as well. So there was a bigger problem. So we traded one set of problem to another set of problem, right? But as it turns out, hey, this is automobiles, right? So you would think, wow, horses were expensive, $200 per year, more work, more effort, diseases, maintenance. You got this automobile, it's a no-brainer, you would say. So if you were a horse owner, what would you say? I'm done with this, send it away, I've got an automobile, right? Does anyone know the time between when the horses were prominent to automobiles were invented to the time, not all, but most people converted from horse carriages to using automobiles? That was 25 years. For 25 years, both the horse wagons and the automobiles literally shared the road. They would run side by side. And you would say, wow, 25 years. It takes that long for things to change in our world. Things that don't change overnight. It takes decades for change to happen. People were still really not sure. Why? Because the automobiles didn't work really well. They would fail. They would have problems. They had to be maintained. People were like, you know what? If I get on the horse, I'll get somewhere. If I get on this, I get stuck in a corner of a street for it to be repaired. There was no AAA back in time for you to call on the phone. There was no cell phones either, right? So essentially, people couldn't trust it. And they had to wait until it became mature. And in 1908, when Ford decided to go with the Model T, it changed the world. Because now we had something that could be manufactured very fast, very cheap, and it worked a lot better as well. And so the point is, just because you have an innovation doesn't mean we drop everything and we run towards it. It's going to take a few decades for the change to happen. With AI, we are just in the beginning. The 20-somethings in the room, you probably will see this happen when you are 40 or 45, most likely, for it to be very effective. If it takes the 25 years, I'll be retired, I'll be gone by then. But it'll be really interesting to see how these things take shape. But as it turns out, this is where the question is. There are folks like me, the old folks, and we are thinking, what are we going to do? If AI is going to take over the world, what's going to happen? And there are these young people in the room. They're like, what do I do now? That's a very reasonable question, isn't it? But here's the funny thing. That 25 years I talked about, when the carriages were going to disappear, and when the automobiles were going to take over, what do? If you're a guy like me, getting old, what do? Do you go learn an automobile when you're really good at horse carriages? Well, the older guys, history said, I don't care about these automobiles. I'm really good managing horses. I'm going to stay driving horse carriages. In the meantime, the young people in the crowd said, I'm going to go learn this automobile and drive it. As it turns out, as I mentioned, not everybody could move towards an automobile, so there were fewer and fewer horse carriage drivers. Their salary went through the roof. They were actually getting paid more to ride the horses because they couldn't find people to ride the horses. In the meantime, the young people were getting paid really good as well because there were not many people who know how to drive that. So if you're a programmer in the room who's really good, your salary probably is going to go up because you know how to do the stuff. If you're a young person learning AI, you have a really great future as well because you know how to tame this beast that the old people like me who probably don't understand enough of how to do it. And this is extremely positive in my opinion, because you get paid if you're old, you get paid if you're new, right, or young. This is an amazing time to be in until the transition happens. Again, we can learn from history in terms of how those things work. You probably heard the term best thing since sliced bread. It's a little delayed here for it to transition. So I think this is being transmitted to outer world and it's coming back here. So, so eventually it'll show up. So you probably heard the term, the best things from sliced bread. There we go, eventually. So this is a term you've all heard. Well, but sliced bread, you say. You know, again, we grew with sliced bread around us. You go to the store, you buy a loaf of bread, it's sliced, and wow, this is great. But have you ever thought about this? Maybe there was a time when the bread was not sliced. Bread was invented 30,000 years ago. Think about that for a minute. We have had bread as humans 30,000 years ago. You probably know the term breaking bread. Why do you have the term breaking bread? Because you literally took the bread and you broke it, because it was not sliced back in time for 30,000 years. And people are like, but you're breaking the bread, and that's a lot of work, not just to break it, but to make it, and then to keep it and to slice it. And so, wouldn't it be nice to slice a bread? But as it turns out, that the bread that we talk about took its time to be really considered to be the best thing, the slicer that is. The slicer did not really gain traction right away. Well, it was invented back in the 1912 is when the first concept of the slicer came about. From 1912, they created a blueprint, they created a prototype, and unfortunately, in the 1920s, the building where they kept the prototype and the blueprint got burned down in a fire. So there goes the slicer. Oops. So they started working on it again. And the first commercial slicer came about in the year 1928. But when the slicer was created, you would say, oh my gosh, we got a slicer, right? Why would you want to not have slicer? Use a slicer and you can have a sliced bread. Well, as it turns out, we take time to learn from what works and what doesn't work. They would use the slicer and they would slice the bread and they would put the bread out and it would become tasteless. So people would say, oh my gosh, if you don't want to really have a good food, slice it. If you want a good tasting bread, don't slice it. But why? They were trying to find out. It turns out when you slice a bread, the bread gets exposed to air very quickly. And it loses taste when it gets exposed to air. So you are eating like sawdust. And you're like, why would I want to eat a bread that doesn't taste very well? Forget it, slices are not good, don't use it. Just like things we are seeing today, right? Oh, you wouldn't use AI for this. Why not? Because it is tasteless. So essentially, it took them a while to figure out how to keep the moisture in the bread. And once that happened, the world shifted over to sliced bread. So as it turns out, even the slicer was not really accepted by the world in the beginning as we would think. So what is AI today? And I want to talk about what does it mean to me? And AI doesn't mean one thing to me. It means multiple things to me. The first thing I would say is, I was kind of curious. So I was playing with different tools, and I can ask about a lot of people. I can ask about Alan Turing. It tells me about Alan Turing. I can ask about various people. I can ask about Simon. It says, Simon is this and that. I mean, I can go to Simon and say, Simon, is this really true? It says this about you. But I figured there's one way to know what it is telling. What if I ask, maybe this is Venkat test, not Turing test. Is it lying? I can ask about myself. So I went to the AI and said, what can you tell me about Venkat Subramaniam? And that's a genuine question. So here's the answer I got. And in fact, I confirmed this morning. It is still telling this. What did it say? It said Venkat Subramaniam is an Indian-American academic. I'm kind of a little surprised they want to call me an academic, but that's fine. So far, so good. And an author who specializes in the intersection of technology and society. Wow, that makes me feel good. He has written extensively on. I would probably say that's reasonable to say. on topics such as artificial intelligence, data privacy, and impact of technology on human behavior. That's a lie. I had to read it multiple times. I've never written anything about artificial intelligence or data privacy or impact on human behavior. This is made up stuff. But it's even worse than this, if you will. And that's the funny part about this. Not only is it a lot, this is extremely a big delay actually. So why is it so slow? It's about 15, 20 seconds delay. So essentially that's a lie, which is strange. There you go, eventually. But it's even worse than being a lie. This is what really puzzled me. It's narcissistic. It wants to say that I talk about it. This is crazy stuff, right? So I thought, well done, AI, right? You ask, what do you think of this person? Oh, he praises me all the time. Well done, well done. So I am going to say AI is a different word than we know. So what is AI? Knowing what it said about me and a lot of other things I've queried, I'm going to say AI stands for alternative information. That's what it is. It gives me an alternative information, not the truth anymore, but something else made up stuff. And that is one of the things we got to be very careful about. So when you query, when you get information from it, how much do you know you can trust that information? So that's an alternative information that you're dealing with. Knowing that is important because you need to be careful in analyzing the information you are provided. I travel all the time. This is United Airlines. I was on a flight the other day when I had to rebook another flight. When you're on a flight, what do? I'm like, I can't use a phone, but I've got to really make this change to the booking. So I went to their website while I was on the airplane, and I went to their chat, and I saw this. It says, welcome, blah, 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 as you would expect. Then it says, please note, some answers may be AI generated based on the content from United.com. They may not always be complete or relevant, so check the source for the most updated information. So it's absolutely inconsistent as well. You cannot rely upon the information it provides. So is it interesting to look at it? Yes. But don't make decisions based on that. But what happens if you do? There can be consequences to what we do about it. In other words, do we have guardrails built around this? And what if you don't have guardrails built around it? Well, we can learn from another airline. This was back in 2022. This is a story of Air Canada. So there was a gentleman whose grandmother passed away. So he went to their website and he said, I want to buy a ticket in the last minute because she passed away, I got to go. And the price is too high. So he was querying, hey, the price is too high for me to travel, what do I do? And the chatbot said, well, that's a price. But my grandma passed away. What can I do? And the AI took sympathy in him and said, you know what? Let me see what we can do. And then he said, but can I travel at a high price and then apply for a reimbursement, saying that I had to go for an emergency? And I said, of course you can do it. So he did, and the airline said, no, you can't do that. You already finished your travel. You cannot get the money back. And he sued. And they decided that Air Canada was at fault. And Air Canada said, but that's not us, that's AI. And they said, we don't care, because that's your website. So are you putting enough guardrails around what you're doing? So I'm not saying don't use it. Absolutely, that's not my message. But be aware of what you're doing with it. You cannot simply expose this out and say, hey, isn't that cool? We can advertise we are using this as well, but there are consequences to what we do. So put guardrails around it as well. It's an incredibly good tool to identify issues. This is where I really appreciate AI, honestly. AI is somewhat like me in that sense. I cannot create great things, but I can complain about things all the time. That's what I'm good about. So if you tell me, write this code really well, I'm like, no, I can't do it. But here's the code, what do you think about it? I'm like, how much time do we have? And this is one area where I really think AI shines a lot. Let me give you an example of this. You can look at this in various different tools, if you will, but I'm just going to copy and paste this and ask for a help. And I'm going to say, in this case, could you tell me what could possibly go wrong with this code? And I'm just throwing that code, little sample code. Notice the beauty of it, right? It goes on and on and on and on, and tells me what could go wrong in this code. Mutable state in stream. You know what? This is the strangest of things. This is the strangest of things. You give a problem to AI and solve it using functional style. They create the worst code possible. You take the code and feed it back to AI and say, what is wrong with it? It tells you everything that's wrong with it. It's fascinating to me that they nailed it. Honestly, the code I just gave there, I've shown it to literally thousands of programmers. Literally thousands of programmers. And I asked them, what's wrong with this? 5% of programmers will tell me what's wrong with it. Most programmers cannot tell me what's wrong with it. And when I asked the question to AI, it said things I didn't even think about. And I was like, wow, isn't that incredibly powerful tool? That's one area I rely on AI, because it's like having a group around you and you're asking the group, tell me what could go wrong here. And everybody throws things at you. Some of them you're like, yeah, don't worry about it, that's just fear. Oh, that's a good one. So look at what it nailed to begin with. Mutable state in a stream, that's a no-no. If you're doing functional programming, you better not do it. So it says that right away. Performance overhead, potential concurrency issue. And this is just one tool giving you this. I've tried this in other AI. I've got 15 items listed. And to me, that's power. Because if I'm looking at a piece of code, most likely not written by me, right? We all do this in work. I was working with a team a couple of weeks ago. I looked at a really, really bad code. I said, oh my gosh, why is this code so awful? And the programmer was immediately quick to tell me, Venkat, you got to know this. They wrote this code before I joined the company, right? This happens all the time. We have to deal with the devil that was left behind. But look at the power. You're looking at a piece of code. You can take the code, give it to AI and say, can you explain what this code is doing? And within seconds, it is telling you what the code is doing. Of course, I took it as a challenge, right? So I took code, and I gave it to AI and said, tell me what this code is doing. Most of the time, it nailed it. It would tell me exactly what the code was doing. So I was curious. I said, interesting, but AI, let me put you through a challenge. So I took my code, which was poorly written, and I made it worse. I changed all the variables to single-letter variable names. It never gave a clue. It didn't say person or even a P. I made it X, Y, and Z, and W. I changed every function to have foo and bar as the name. And I fed that to AI and said, now what? It was really struggling. It couldn't really find out what the code was doing. And it kind of said, you know, analyzing the code, it makes me think that this is maybe related to this domain. I was like, wow. So this again comes back to one thing. If you write code with even a little modicum of context in it, tools are better dealing with it. If your code is really, really that bad, that's one of the ways you can actually show how bad the code is that even AI cannot understand your code, right? So this could be an area where we can absolutely benefit from. And so I would say AI is an awesome investigator. Because to me, this is one of the areas where I truly appreciate as a programmer today, is because I have to deal with legacy code all the time. When I'm dealing with legacy code, I take my code, feed it into AI and say, tell me what's going on here, because I got work to do. And it tells me what it thinks about it. I'm like, thank you. I did not even think of it, but you took me up the elevator to the 20th floor. I can walk from here. right? So it's a very good tool to bring you up to speed on that level. But what about code generation, I would ask? Should I use this for really generating code? So here's one example of a code that I generated as I was playing with something. And the code I came across, when it shows up eventually, is this. I have a bunch of values coming into as a collection. And the values could be repeated. As an example, right? I got people in this room with a black shirt. I've got people in the room with a red shirt. I want to know how many people have black shirt, how many people have red shirt, how many people have blue shirt, and so on. And I want to calculate it. So I'm still waiting for this to show up. So the question is, how would we do this? And as soon as I said, this is what I want to do, the code generation, the AI generated code much faster than this, I can tell you that, right? Much, much faster than the screen can show it. There you go. So look at this code for a minute. I want you to give me a little thumbs up or a thumbs down or a middle like this. Is it right? Nice code it did for the problem? I'm not even sure. Or hands down, thumbs up, I see thumbs up. Anybody else? Yeah, so a few middle, a few up. Others are still, the other people who would not raise their hand no matter what I ask, that's fine. But I would say that nails it. That's a pretty darn good code. But on the other hand, if I asked a different, so I would say that's accelerated inference. I call it accelerated inference because you may wonder, how does AI know to write this code? How does it do this? Well, fundamentally, it's an inference engine. It's able to infer things. As humans, we do inference. We are smart in inferring things. But there's a limitation of bandwidth up here, no matter how good you are. But an AI can take that to the extreme limit and could do inference. This one, when it shows up, is another piece of code that I asked it to generate. And in this particular example, the code it generated, when it shows up, so essentially solved the problem, but it was way overcomplicated. And when you look at the solution, you're like, wow. And in fact, it's funny because in the first shot, when I did it, it gave me the code which was really good. But in the second example, when I asked it to create the code, it not only created the code, it commented. Okay, so I just have to wait for this. It's hard to explain about things you cannot see. Okay, so it commented out, it commented on every single line of code as it was being written. There you go, finally. Now, when you look at this code, what do you think about this code? Now, I often say this. A sign of bad code is proportional to how many comments it has. This is a code that does things you're not supposed to do. Notice it says add right there. Remember what I said earlier. When you feed a code like this to AI, it says, that's bad code, don't write it. Then why did you write it? So it knows it's bad and yet it is doing it, right? This is also accelerated in inference. But how does it feel? Think of a code as an optimization problem. There are multiple solutions for the same problem. That doesn't mean all the solutions are equally good, but it can pick any one of the solutions. This is one of the reasons why it's not consistent. It's not consistent not because it likes to be not consistent, no. It's because there are multiple valid solutions. It just picks one of them as it finds it. It's literally an inference engine that is inferring solutions for you. So how does it feel to think about it? Here's a way to think about it, if you will, in terms of what the inference engine is.
But does your friend often do that?
Strange. You all right?
That's kind of what AI is doing, right?
You back here.
Hey, what was that?
Forward time. To view alternate futures. To see all the possible outcomes of common conflict.
How many did you see?
14,605. How many did you win? One.
that's kind of what it feels like for me. When I look at this inference engine, that's like, funny. All right. So essentially, I have no clue what that was. That also feels like AI some days, right? Okay. So essentially, someone recently asked me this question, and this is one of the reasons I love just being in public, is because people will ask stuff I never think about, but maybe I don't think about it explicitly, but it's in the back of my mind. So somebody came up to me and said, this happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they said, you're a programmer? Like, yeah. And then they said, what do you think of AI? Will it take away your job? And I was like, wow, what an interesting way to start a conversation. And I said, when I ask AI to do something I'm a novice at, I see it's awesome. When I ask it to do things I have no clue about, I'm like, wow, did you see that? And then, when I ask AI to do something I'm an expert at, I see it awful. I'm like, really? That's not what I would do. That's not the code I would permit anyone in my code to be in my team to be writing. And that is, to me, the power and peril of what we are dealing with. It is great when you don't pay attention to it, either because you don't want to pay attention to it, or you don't know how to pay attention to it. But if you are really interested in not just the result, but what it is producing, if you're really interested in the quality of what it creates, or even the correctness, this is something we did yesterday in the workshop. We were taking different problems, and suddenly people in the room were challenging and questioning me. They were like, wait, you're saying that code is generated. Is it even correct? Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's code that won't even compile. Even forget about the fact that it produces the right results. So the question you want to ask is, what is it? But that's the exact point you have to keep in mind. AI is a tool. And that's exactly what it is. It's a tool. It's a tool, leverage it, but don't put all your faith into it. Because if you are convinced that this is it, then I think we have a bigger problem. Because it's exactly what it is. It's a tool. It's a tool for you, not a tool instead of you. That's the key to keep in mind. Oops, that went away. I think AI is doing this to us. It doesn't want you to listen to this. So can we check what happened to the screen? Is it my screen actually that's pulling up the wrong stuff on your side? Can you check what's going on? I'm not sure what's going on with this. Let me quickly see if I can find out if the... Oh, there we go. It's coming up now. There we go. Let's see if it holds up. All right. So it's a tool. So I kind of Googled away and found out what people are talking about. Whoa. Sorry, folks. I'm not sure what's going on with this. Okay. So essentially, what do people say about AI generation of code? Things like this. Using AI-generated code will make you a bad programmer. I know that's extremely, hyperbolic, right? Don't take such words into measure. But these are experiences people are talking about, right? AI tools increase the amount of bad code. The dark side of AI, how generating code could be when AI product, code goes bad, blah, 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 blah. But here's the deal. When you look at it, it makes sense. Humans write bad code. We all know that. I've written bad code myself. AI was trained on code written by humans. Humans complain that AI is generating bad code. That's called karma, baby. Time for you to pay back. So no doubt, it's creating bad code. Because guess whom it learned from? You sit there like, I wish I had written a better quality code now, isn't it? So no wonder it's a payback time, right? We are facing this once more. So that's the reality of where we are living with. This is something we created. It's our own making. That's what it really is, right? So the problem is not that they have not been trained enough. The problem is it's been trained on everything that is good and bad with no delineation of quality. We didn't tell AI, these are bad words you shouldn't speak in public. These are good words you can speak and publish. We said, bingo, here's the language for you. And it's like, oh my gosh, how filthy you are. Well, sorry, I saw that in the vocabulary, right? And that's exactly what's happening. So it is just learning from the things that's been fed to it. It's not its fault. So what gives? What do we do? So at least for now, use AI to generate ideas, not solutions. I love ideas. That's what I do with my team. When I sit with my team, I'm not telling my team, give me a solution, give me a solution. No. I'm talking to them and saying, throw ideas at me. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you can think of. Tell me the things I should worry about. Tell me the things I should focus on. I want your ideas. Because when people feed ideas, we can then be selective on what to focus on, what not to focus on. Ideas are extremely important. This is where innovation happens. Because out of 1,000 ideas, we may channel in and focus on maybe a dozen of them. And about the dozen of them we focus on, maybe 1 or 2 will eventually win, if at all. So the more ideas you have, the more chances of success. The fewer ideas you have, the fewer options you have to succeed. So to me, if I can use AI to generate ideas, that's great. So I'm not rushing to find solutions with AI. I am eager to use AI for ideas because that's where the benefit really is. So solutions carry a larger burden than ideas. I don't solve problems lightly because there are consequences to doing it. When I work with banks, when I work with airline industry, when I work with hospitals, when I work with manufacturers, if I mess up, they will come after me because there are consequences to what I do for them. So I cannot take solutions lightly. I don't have the luxury to do that. I got to be careful about what I do because there's reputation involved, but more important, there's consequences involved to what we do. So solutions carry a lot more burden on us. There's accountability. This is why I care about code quality. There are people who are cavalier. Oh, that's okay if it doesn't work. No, I'm sorry, that's not an option for me. It's got to be reliable. It's got to be correct. It's got to be maintainable. But I welcome strange ideas, but I don't welcome strange solutions. I can't deal with that. So if you're telling me I can generate all of this and I can do prototypes with it, and I can quickly get a feedback on what a client may want to do, I'm like, go for it. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to try these ideas over and over and over. That's a really good use of it. Leverage it. But in the long term, that's my short-term advice. But what's in the long term? As Peter Drucker said, the best way to predict the future is to make it. Absolutely. And that's what a lot of people in this room are going to do as time goes on. AI is a black swan. Taleb talked about black swans a few decades ago. Humans have had several black swans. The idea is there was a time in human history when the swans were all white in color. Imagine the surprise when the first dude ran into a black swan. Well, what was that, right? Well, there are several black swans. There are good black swans and dangerous black swans. Let me talk about good black swans. Google, I think we can agree to it. Google fundamentally changed the way we seek information, isn't it? There is time before Google, there is time after Google. My children always look at me and say, Dad, what did you do when you were a kid? How did you find information? You had no cell phone, no Google. How did you even live, Dad? Right? It just fascinates them. They don't understand how the world existed before Google existed. Google is a great black swan. There are dangerous black swans also in JavaScript. Okay, so essentially, things that just take over the world, right? And they change everything around you. And you look at this and say, wow, how did this even, internet is a black swan. Maybe significant people in the room were born with internet around them. When I was born, there was no internet as we know it. Internet just came about the time I was born. And then I started using internet when I was in the university. And the world did not know what internet was. That was among people who worked in a special business or in a university. And then suddenly the world saw email. They're like, wow, we can use email. We're like, I've been using this for 15 years now. But that's a black swan. Change the world, how we communicate, right? AI is a black swan. Every single human endeavor has started with failures and mistrials. So when you look at AI and say, oh, it's not doing well, what else has humans done that ever worked the first time or the second time or the third time? We built societies based on failures. That's what we have done. Everything we have done ever has failed. Not just once, but multiple times. So don't look at it pessimistically as to what it does today. That's not about what it can do today. But see beyond what it can do today. Because that's basically life as we have lived forever as humans. Decades ago, we had a healthy dose of suspicion about compilers. So we were suspicious about compilers. Now, and rightfully so. And then we started trusting compilers. Let me emphasize this. We did not trust compilers because we wanted to be more trusting. We started trusting compilers because compilers earned the reputation to be trusted. They gave us the performance. They gave us the accuracy. So it's not that we changed. It's that the compilers changed. And they earned our trust. We didn't trust them. We said, I can write this code really well. You think this machine can do it? And they're like, yeah, we can. Not today, but we're working on it. And they did. And today we rely on these machines and compilers to do the work much better than a human can. I will bet you today we can agree, right? Because no human can write as effective a code at the machine level as a compiler can, hands down. And we have come to rely upon it. But it took time to get to that point. We got to give it the time to do it. Airplanes fell out of skies in the early days of aviation. If you took an airplane, there were several crashes. Thankfully, I wish this was even better than it is today. But thankfully, it's still, airplanes are safer to travel than to take a car on the road, hands down, even today, in spite of the unfortunate events in the past several months and weeks. But that's not the way it was. It fundamentally changed the industry where we realized that's a mode of transportation we can take because, relatively speaking, it's more reliable than everything else we did. But that's not the way it was for a few decades in the beginning. And we are living this life of who moved the cheese. This is a silly book, but I've read it a few times, and I read it a few times again, because when things kind of are burdening you, you feel a bit overwhelmed, and you're like, what's going on around me? This can be very useful. Because, like I said, it's a silly idea, but Spencer Johnson talks about 4 characters in his book. It's a very thin book. It's $4 in price. If you have not read this book, I recommend you do. And when you read this book, it's a funny story. He talks about 4 characters in this book. 2 characters are mice-like. 2 are human-like. But the 2 characters, mice-like, you can ignore them for the most part. They are creatures. They are just impulsive. They just run around. They don't have much sense. But the human-like characters, there are 2 of them. The 2 characters are Hem and Ha. Hem is the grumpy one. Well, I am entitled to do this. I'm entitled for this. How dare they don't have the cheese around me? And Ha is the guy who's like, well, you know what? Life happens. Let me just go around and find cheese. And I think we are yet again living who moved my cheese. Because for every one of us, the cheese station is empty, whether you like it or not. And you could be like him and complain and say, how dare you don't have cheese when I need it. Or you can be the ha and be energized and say, you know what? I'm damn happy there's no cheese here. I can go find it today. And that's one of the things you want to ask. Whom do you want to be? Do you want to be the hem or the ha? That's a question I ask every day when I wake up. Because life burdens us. And we got to make a choice. You got to ask yourselves, do you want to be the hem or the ha? That's as simple as that. And there are consequences to the decisions we make. It doesn't matter whether you're 20 or 60. That's a decision you have to make every day. The decision you have to make is to ride or to be swept away. That's a choice you have to make. You don't have a choice not to make it. This is in front of you. You got to decide it. Because if you don't, you get drowned. And that's a choice you have to make as well. So Darwin is often misquoted as saying the fittest survives. Not true at all. He did not say that. Because if you tell me the fittest survive, I wouldn't be standing here. I'm the least fit in a lot of ways. I'm not standing here because I'm the fittest. I'm not going to really be able to, if you throw me a blow, I'll be on the floor in a second. So I'm not the fittest at all. But essentially, the argument here is, he says, not really. After all, dinosaurs did not make it. Dinosaurs were really, really fit, isn't it? They were huge. Dinosaurs did not make it. Remember the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs in our field may not make it. That's sorry, with no disrespect to anyone. If you're the dinosaur in the field, you're probably not going to make it eventually. And according to Darwin's Origin of Species, it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the strongest that survives. But the species that survives is the one that's able to best to adapt and to adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. That's the whole idea of this. This is stuck in the dinosaurs. And with all respect, if you don't mind me saying, I want to point to Stefan. Could you stand up for us, please? He is a fantastic example. A lot of us in the industry look up to him. Why? Because he didn't look at AI and say, oh my gosh, where's the exit? He is rocking the world, exploring this and innovating. And that is a lesson to learn from. So thanks for what you do. So this is exactly what we want to do, is to be able to face these challenges. And notice the quote here. The changing environment in which it finds itself. It's not a choice you make to be in that environment. You're drawn into it. Sorry, you don't have a choice. Now you decide you want to survive or be extinct. So some of us will be extinct, or some of us will be adaptive, as Stefan is, and be able to go rule the world because we can take command. That's something to learn from. And that is exactly what we want to think about, right? What do we want to be? So if your job is mostly typing code, that part of the job will disappear. It will, it should. But it's mostly the problem solving, decision making, inferring context, leveraging proper tools to accomplish those, then delivering results that will be further enriching moving forward. So ask yourselves, what is your job? Are you a coder or are you a problem solver? If you're a coder, the machine is going to do a better job than you do. If you're a problem solver, you're going to have a fun time because you just found another tool to make your life better. This is enriching. And so skill up, don't fear down. Let me repeat it. Skill up, don't fear down. Because we are living in the worst of the times and we are living in the best of the times. its worst or best is for us to make, and I hope you do. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.